League legends. We're joined by a passionate, physical and proud Queenslander. Gorden Tallis won 3 premierships with the Broncos and captained both his state and country. The Raging Bull was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2018. Gorden Tallis, welcome to League Legends.
It's good to be here, Jakey.
A humble beginnings in Townsville, before the Cowboys, before the Broncos. Yeah. Where did your love of rugby league come from?
I just think it come from going to the Townsville Sports Reserve, and that's where, you know, the main game was played every Sunday. It was just in our blood. Like, Dad played for so many clubs there, and then Townsville was flying at the time. There was like the young Gene Miles and Colin Scott and the Canberras, and I used to go there and be the sandboy and boy, and Mum wouldn't let me play till under 8s, and the closest club was Centrals, and that was, you know, about 5k away, and we used to ride our bikes or, you know, get dropped off, and I just loved it from the moment I'd played my first game.
You mentioned your old man there, and anyone who's been up to Townsville, to the new stadium, will see Wally Tallis Way there. Tell me about your old man's legacy in Townsville.
Well, he didn't tell me too much. I didn't know half of the things that he's done, and that's just going home now and talking to, you know, just people in the streets. But, you know, he played a lot of AFL, played a lot of rugby league. He played AFL on Saturday, rugby league. He played cricket, he played basketball, he played a lot of sports. But his main love was rugby league. He went and played in England with the great Bobby Hagan, who was the CEO of the Bulldogs, and Bluey Raleigh and a few guys like all these old North Queensland boys that went over there to have a go. So he went and played for Lee. But he didn't tell me too much. All I know now is when I go home, the greatest thing about my dad is when I go home, I'm Wally Tallis's boy. I'm not Gorden Tallis, the footy player. So he's still like the king of North sort of thing. So, but he was a big fullback. He was 6'4", so in his prime, he would have been a 90 to 100 kilo fullback, you know, back in the 60s.
Sounds like he had a bit of skill, a bit of speed. And what happened with you?
Yeah, I didn't get in. Yeah, I didn't get in. My sister got all Dad's ability, and my brother got a bit. Yeah, I'm probably on Mum's side. I got the aggressive, bad-tempered guy, and Dad was just such a quiet, shy guy that played fullback and didn't like doing too much or hurting anybody, and I'm completely opposite. When
did you start to see that Raging Bull side of yourself when you were younger?
I didn't. I don't think I did see it until the further you go up the ranks. So when you're a kid, everybody can pass, they kick, they all want to play. I wanted to be Wally Lewis, so everybody was playing 5'8". I was playing either 5'8", centre or lock until St George offered me a trial, and I went down there and I made the Dragons, and I didn't play lock. I went back straight in the back row, and they were trying to make me a front rower. So that's pretty much how much ability I had. So I knew that I couldn't play like Alan Langer or Andrew Johns or Noel Goldthorpe or Anthony Mundine. So how I played was running really hard and be aggressive. So I actually had to teach myself that later on in life, because I didn't have to play like that as a kid. No one had to run hard as a kid. You get caught in trying to be that guy in the paper. I don't know whoever said that I was a Raging Bull, but then, you know, sometimes you get caught up with trying to be that guy sometimes. So it was fabricated.
That's funny, because a lot of people would just think you're one of those guys who gets the red mist and they lose their control or get angry. But you're saying it was more something you just created for yourself.
No, I was a skinny little kid. I was like when I signed with the Dragons at 6'2" or 3 or whatever, I was 86 kilo. So I never had the frame to play that way. So I would have got eaten up and spat out. So I put on a few kilos and still am today. So no, am I like... You know, I always wanted to be like Gene Miles or Wally Lewis, so I didn't want to play like a front rower or a back rower back then.
And you got exposure very early, didn't you, at a young age, into the Dragons side, coming off the bench in a grand final against the Broncos, ironically, against some of the guys that would end up being your long-term teammates when you eventually went there. But to get that early taste of defeat, what was that like?
Yeah, it was strange. That really helped me through my whole career, because it was the first real big game that I played. I actually played in the under-21s grand final the year before. We got beaten, and then to go and play against the Broncos, and they were the best side all year, and then they had a few injuries, and then they limped in. They sort of, you know, were 5th, and they were defending premiers, and we were in a pretty good shape that year. And then to get to the grand final, and I know I was distracted because Tina Turner was in the tunnel and I heard this commotion and I wanted to go see who it was, which means that I wasn't so, now in hindsight, I wasn't so focused on the game, but I was on the bench, but I still shouldn't have known what was going on around me. And then from that moment on, every big game I ever played, I made sure that I stayed in the dressing room. So, and just sat in my own space, and it was about what I had to do in the next 40 or 50 minutes. I didn't overthink it, but I didn't care what was going on around me.
It was a pretty good performance, but Tina, could you hear it from the tunnel?
Yeah, no, Tina was great, actually. And then I remember, like, we're losing, and I don't have the photo, but she went and got a photo with the winners, which is what you'd probably do. And the Broncos have got a great photo with Tina in the clubhouse, and it looks so cool. And she came over and got a photo with the Dragons, but I don't know who's got that photo. Can you please send it to us?
Was it weird being a Queenslander playing against the Broncos? Did that feel strange?
Yeah, absolutely, because that was the only club I ever wanted to play for, because my hero, Wally Lewis, wore that jersey, and my brother had signed there in, I think, 89 or whatever, so that was the only club that you wanted to play for. And I didn't get the opportunity. I had to go down to the Dragons. So watching Brisbane play, there was probably a bit of jealousy that they were the best kids in Queensland. So that was, if you were a good player in any age group, you know, you always had a Broncos tracksuit or a hat or a scholarship, and I was overlooked for all that. So watching them play was a bit of jealousy, I suppose.
Well, let's fast forward a couple of years, because you signed with the Broncos, with the Super League coming in, but then it all ends up a bit messed up, is probably a fair way of summing it up. What's your recollection of signing with Brisbane and then how it played out with St George?
Well, it was the only chance I was ever going to get to go home. Super League and ARL, without going too deep into it, once you picked and signed with Super League, you could pick your team. And a couple of my mates had gone to Cronulla, a couple had gone to the Dogs, and the Super League bosses at the time, I think it was John Rebo and David Gallop, they were trying to push me to one of the weaker franchises or newer franchises, and I knew that if I was signing Super League, I was going to Brisbane, and that was it. So I actually sat in a holding pattern for about 4 to 6 weeks, because they didn't want me to go to Brisbane. They thought that it would have been stacking aside, and I think Shane Edwards, our CEO, goes, listen, there's a guy sitting at Super League and he won't play Super League. He'll go back to the ARL if you don't take him. And Wayne goes, well, I suppose I'll take him, because he didn't really know me that much either. So, and then that was my opportunity to go play for the Broncos.
So when you went to the Dragons and asked to be released to go, what was their immediate reaction?
We all voted 55-3 to go to Super League as a club, the Dragons. So I remember that meeting like it was yesterday. We were down in the old Chinese restaurant under the club, and as a club we could all stay together and sign to go play Super League. And, you know, we probably wouldn't have merged. We would have got enough money then, and but they were a traditional club and they didn't want to move. And then when I went to see them, and I actually saw Jeff Carr, and we had to go to court, and I said, look, I've signed Super League, and they're saying it's a $2 shelf company, it won't get up. I said, well, if it does, they said, we won't hold you back. And then obviously Jeff Carr got moved on, and Brian Johnson, the famous centre, he became the new CEO, and he said, I'm not going to release you, mate, you're too important. So they didn't, and I was glad, and I've said it on radio since, that I think our game needs to show that stance again. I was a young kid, I had a contract, no one breached it. I was the one that was breaching it, and they made me sit out a year.
When you landed in Brisbane and you went on to win the Super League title straight away, was that vindication for what you sat through and what you went through?
No, I don't think it was. I was on the coattails of the great players there then. I think Stephen F scored a hat-trick, and Lockie was great that night, and you know, the Lazos and the Webkeys and the Walders and Langers, I was just a passenger. You know, I was still working really hard on my game. So I didn't feel like, you know, even though it was a great moment, it was emotional, and but there was 2 competitions. We didn't play against everybody. It wasn't the competition. You know, I wanted to play against the best players and test myself. So it was a great victory, and no one can take that away from us, but it probably didn't feel as good as what Newcastle felt after theirs.
Well, then coming back the next year and doing it again in the unified competition.
That was better.
That was better?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember we played Newcastle in about round 10 or 11, and Wayne's not big on building us up. He was never big, because emotion lasts for 2 minutes until you get hit under the ribs. But I remember that week he said, boys, if You know, if you want to cement and rubber stamp your grand final from last year, you're playing the premiers. So you want to go there and do a good job on them tonight. And, we beat Newcastle, and I think that felt better, beating like the premiers, and then obviously going on and we beat the Dogs in the grand final. It was a tough year, and that was a pretty good side. I'd say out of all the Broncos sides I've ever played with, that'd be the best. I think even in the history of the club, that one would be really hard to beat, 98.
If you stack them all up, those premierships, where do they all rank for you?
They're probably all like children, but 2000 is my favourite because I felt like we were a bigger part of it. You know, they were still the great players. Like, there was no Alf, it was Kevy, who was in and out. He was injured a lot that year. I captained probably half the games. So, and with Lockie and Webby and Wendell and Lottie and those guys, we felt like, you know, we were the senior guys now. You know, taking the bull by the horns. And Kevy was a fantastic leader for us that year because he wasn't at his best, you know, because he had so many injuries and he'd lost his, you know, co-pilot and Alfie, but he still led us tremendously.
Coach off the field, Wayne.
Yeah.
There's two things people talk about when they talk about Wayne Bennett. They talk about the secret sense of humour that's not seen to the public, and then they talk about the man manager that could kind of whisper in your ear and get the best out of you. Was there a time where Wayne whispered in your ear and said the right thing and got what he needed out of you, and that was the kind of display of what people see in him as a coach?
Yeah, there's a couple of things about Wayne. The first time, because I was coached by Brian Smith, and he's a great coach and he's a great educator, but it was very much a school teacher and a lot of information, and it's really hard to process and do that under fatigue. So when you're a young kid and trying to learn, and you know there's so many moving parts on a rugby league field, and you're remembering the game plan, it was a little bit hard early because I'd never played in that sort of system. And then when I went to Brisbane, I remember before my first game, I walk up to Wayne, and it's like about 20 minutes before we go, I said, "Hey Wayne, what do you want me to do today?" And I'm going to take out the swear words. He goes, "Just play footy." But he threw a heap, and I'm like, I'm more confused now than what I was with the Brian Smith game plan. So that was as simple as he wanted me, just to, like, no pressure. But I remember I was sitting there one Origin, and I'm sitting in the change room, and you'd be really nervous. And he walked over and he goes, "Oh, Origin, special in?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Who did you want to be when you were a kid?" I said, "I always wanted to be Wally Lewis or Gene Miles or whoever played the best." He goes, "Just imagine if every kid wanted to be Gorden Tallis tomorrow." And that was you know, and then I'm thinking, now there's more pressure on me sort of thing. But he would have those one-liners. But what Wayne would do is he'd make you train to your limit. He'd break you down and make you go further than what you thought you could go. And a couple of times we were doing these long runs, and it's 8.5K, and it's at the Gap Reservoir, and it's really tough, and it's in the middle of Brisbane summer, and it's really hot. You know, chickens lay hard-boiled eggs. It's that hot. And Wayne would run and finish in the top 5 or 3. Like, he used to win it, but when he was 50. So I don't know how many 50-year-olds could run, and that was, you know, with the Lockies, and I know Kevy holds the record out there, but there's some really fit guys, and that's the respect that Wayne got off you, because he could, you know, go as deep, you know, mentally as he wanted you to.
Let's talk about some of your best stinks on the football field, some of your great fights. There was Terry O'Connor in the World Club Challenge.
Yes.
What sparked that one? Because it looked like...
Nothing.
Nothing.
It was nothing. It was nothing. No, Terry's actually a really good fellow. He turned 50 not so long ago, but Terry kept on calling me a convict. And I always laugh. I said I wasn't sticking up for me because I'm a black fella, so I was sticking up for my white teammates. But that's all what it was. He just kept on calling me a convict. And I just got the shits. I said, "Don't do that. Don't say that." And he said it again, and then I punched him.
What about the Ben Ross?
Ben Ross was different because I had neck surgery and I wanted to retire. And Wayne said that I just need you to hang around for a little bit more. So as soon as I hurt my neck, I was going to retire at about 27. Because I couldn't train, I couldn't do the stuff that I needed to do to get, you know, myself in shape to play. And then people started chirping it like a lot more, and, you know, and I wasn't playing good either because I couldn't. And then the sledging was getting to me a little bit. And I said to Wayne one pre-season, I said, "Wayne," I said, "mate, everybody's, you know, chirping and getting under my grill a bit." He goes, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Can I have a fight?" And he said, "Yes." He goes, "Just make it in the early rounds and make sure it's a big guy." You just needed to learn to control your temper, and it's it's really hard, and I hate when people try to talk about Jared Hargreaves now. Like, if I could play like Andrew Johns, I would have played like Andrew Johns or Darren Lockyer or Alan Langer. It would have been more fun playing like Jonathan Thurston, trust me. Kicking and stepping and throwing passes for tries is a great way of playing rugby league, but when you can't do that, they take more and more tools off you and you've got to start running hard. And for me to get myself motivated to run into a Jared Hargreaves or tackle Paul Harrigan or Spard or, you know, Smith Gillespie or whatever, you know, you've got to mentally be up for it.
The neck injury.
Yep.
How scary was it?
It wasn't scary because I didn't know what had happened. So it was against the Northern Eagles. I reckon it was about 12 minutes to go. I went to step inside Adam Muir. I don't know why I tried to step, and he just clipped me high. And then I just had a disc that was old and degenerative, and it slid forward and was pushing, and I was laying on the floor and I couldn't feel my legs or arm, but I didn't know that then. I'm thinking it's weird, I'm not knocked out because I'm talking to the trainer and because I didn't know what had happened. And I'm sitting there and then I'm on the sideline and then my arms and legs just started burning like it was an uncontrollable burn, like you've fallen asleep on your arms or your legs, but times that by 20.
What was the aftermath like when you found out how serious it was and what the repercussions could be moving forward?
Yeah, so when I got the first scans, I saw, like, the bloke comes out and he goes, "How did you get here?" I said, "I drove." He goes, "Well," I said, "I drove." He goes, "Can you walk these?" Because the hospitals and the doctors were closed. "Can you walk these up there?" I said, "Yeah, fine." He goes, "I just don't want you to jump in a car." So I'm thinking, that's a bit weird. Then I go to the doctor and it was the club doctor. He goes, "Oh." I said, "What is this?" Because Origin, I said, "Is it 4 weeks? Is it 2 weeks? What is it? Is it going to come good?" He goes, "Oh, not sure." He goes, "Wait here." And then he goes, "You've got to go see a surgeon." And it just, like, the messages were getting worse. I mean, like it was getting more serious. And, you know, the first one goes, "Oh, look, you ask your doctor." The second one, 4 weeks. And then, they said, "Mate, we got to operate and we don't know whether you'll play again." And that was a bit tough.
To hear that?
Yeah, I suppose, because I love playing the game, you know. And then, you know, like I remember I was sitting there and, you know, and my wife was there and, you know, they do the test and I had my eyes closed and they put cotton wool or pins and I'm sitting there and I was guessing. Like, I'm trying to play. This is how silly I am. I'm guessing. Yep, pin, cotton wool, cold, hot. I had no idea. I was guessing which one it was. I had no feelings, and I'm glad I had a great surgeon. I'm in Jeff Askin, and I've got a lot of really good friends that have had the same accidents, you know, playing, you know, like a lot of rugby union kids, you know, packing in the scrums.
Nathan Brown had a similar...
Funnily enough, Nathan Brown, Jason Stevens and myself, we all got it in the same year, and we were teammates and really close mates. So, and it's just the nature of our game. But I was actually born with a narrowing of the spinal cord, so it actually saved me because it would have ended up happening, and maybe when I'm a bit older now. So rugby league saved me, I say.
Were there people in your life that didn't want you to play on? But
my mum. That was the saddest thing. I think I got home one day and she was crying and said she didn't enjoy watching me play anymore because I was playing. I think Ben Cray hit me in the back, and when they do, like, my arms would get the same. Like when Brent Tate, you just get the burners really easy. So the sensation, the burning sensation would come back into your body. And then, you know, and the reason why I used to play was for mum and dad. You know, so when mum didn't like watching me play and said, I didn't want to play anymore, so I sort of put the cue in the rack and made sure that I was dodging. And it's not a shame because I thought I was getting to a point in my career where I could have really stamped myself. You know, like I played for Queensland. It was my first ever State of Origin as captain. You know, get man of the match in the next game. And that's when I thought I belonged. I know it's funny. I thought I belonged in the game. I thought now I can, like, I've made it and this is my time. And then the next game I'm, you know, laying on my back and never the same player.
You had some really famous moments in Origin. Yeah. What about old Hollywood Harrigan?
Yeah. And
the send-off? What did you say to him, if you can, I guess...
Well, there was two knock-ons. Definitely two knock-ons.
I watched it last night. They were definitely knock-ons.
Two knock-ons. Yeah. There's two knock-ons, right? Yeah. God, someone from New South Wales. And then I end up saying, "Hey, Bill, there's two knock-ons." And I looked at the touch judge. I think it was about 7 minutes to go. We can go down and kick a field goal, and I think Queensland were good enough to dig in. You know, I mean, and we hadn't won it. I think it was called Telstra Stadium at the time. I think we'd been there on 10 occasions or whatever and hadn't won a game. Like, we'd struggled in Sydney, you know, especially through my era. So I'm thinking we're going to go there, we're going to get off in game one. Then I said, Bill, you saw those, he goes, just play or something like that. So then I started giving him a bit of grief in a line. But one thing I did say to him, I said, you're not going to be here for game two. I said, you won't be here for game two after that. And I told him that Stephen Clark was a better referee. So then we get over and I said, why didn't you go to the video ref? Like, why didn't you go and check it? He goes, go away. I said, you're a cheat. With a few other words, he goes, what'd you call me? I said, I called you a cheat. And I shouldn't have, so I'm wrong. Because you don't think that there's parents in at home with their kids with the remote control. Now I see it, but at the time, I'm trying to win a state of origin. And then I said, you're a cheat. He goes, call me that again. And I said, you don't have the kahunas. And he said, see ya. And I'm like, oh, he does. In that moment, I realised I let down my state, my mates. So I let him down from arguing a point where he wasn't going to change his mind. And I thought with the technology that we would have went back in today's game, I wouldn't have had to worry. The bunker would have got that one right, hopefully.
Another famous moment was the ragdoll tackle on Pride Brett Hodgson.
Yeah, I feel sorry for him. Like, I really do. I wish it was somebody else. I wish it was Andrew Johns or someone like that, someone that I'm friends with. But Brett, he was such a great player. He won the Men of Steel over in England. He just skipped on the outside of me, and just when I grabbed his collar, and it was pretty slippery, you know, when he went off his feet, there wasn't much weight to him.
You know. It was a fair distance to the sideline, bud.
Yeah, but once his momentum was going, it didn't seem that far. It didn't seem that far.
You did play for your country on multiple times, and you captained them as well. In a big win, I think it was over Russia.
Yeah.
You captained the game.
I think we got to 100. The reason I love playing for Australia was to play with the best players. You know, like you'd play with, you know, like to play with Andrew Johns and Laurie Daly. I played with Bradley Clyde. You know, that was actually really special. You know, to go play with those guys, and you know, they were, you know, even though I was sort of competing against them, I still looked up to those sort of guys. And you know, ET's another one, and Girdler, and then you know all the New South Wales boys and Danny Badiris and the like. It was actually really cool to share your career and have some great moments overseas.
You left two names off there, Fletch and Hindy. You won a World Cup with them. Yeah. Can you believe now?
Were they in that same conversation as those other guys?
Yeah, well, they probably
they are. Do you know, Nathan actually, I probably never told him this, but he drove me to be a better player because Wendell and all the boys used to always talk about how good Nathan Hindmarsh was. It used to really piss me off. So at training, they go, geez, did you watch Nathan Hindmarsh play the other night? And they just say it loud enough so I could hear it, and Thorny and Tony Carroll, so we'd all hear. And Nathan burst onto the scene too. Like when he came on, he was a great wide-running back rower. It's just a shame that he was so guilty that he went and played, you know, in the middle for like a lot of his career because he was so damaging on the edge. He was a great ball runner on the edge, and Brian Fletcher was someone that I looked up to because I could never do what Brian used to do on the field. And it's a shame because these days when we pigeonhole, you know, a David Fafita or a Finucane, we want David Fafita to play like Dale Finucane, but no one can do what Dave Fafita did. And I couldn't play like Fletch, and I couldn't play like Hindy. But the good thing was, in our era, they didn't want us all to play the same. The greatest thing about my career is they let me be Gorden Tallis.
The footy career, it started in Townsville, it ended in Townsville. Yeah. Obviously not the way you wanted to, going down to the Cowboys, but poetic that it finished there.
That's my fairy tale. I grew up, I played my first game under 8s, under a tree at Central's ASA, about 10k down the road to play my last ever game of rugby league. I think it was really fitting. And I remember the Cowboys, that was the first time they beat the Broncos. I think that's the first time North Queensland actually believed that they belonged in the competition. And I remember going over to say goodbye to my family and thank them, and I saw Dad, and I was really emotional, and I was expecting him to say, don't worry about it, son. And he just said, how good were the Cowboys? I felt like punching him. It's like, are you serious? But that's Dad. He was a North Queenslander. He wasn't he was such a proud North Queensland guy that even when his son was playing for the Broncos, he was going for North Queensland.
Started on the bench that night.
Yeah, that was Wayne's idea.
Yeah.
That was...
But there was an upset stomach as well?
Nothing.
No,
that was him. That was his message. We had a senior players meeting. He goes, oh, we need something off the bench. We got beaten by Melbourne Storm, and like we're holding them. And after 25 minutes, when Webby and Petro that go off, we just had no oomph coming on. And he goes, I might start Gordy. And then all of them told me, I said, no, he's our leader. He starts. And then Kevy rings me on Thursday, goes, I think Wayne's going to start you on the bench. I said, no, we had a meeting. He goes, mate, I think he's going to start you on the bench. I said, no, I don't think so. Then we get Saturday to do the team walk. And he waited till we got in the team walk, goes, I'm going to start you on the bench. And he knew that I wouldn't say anything in front of my teammates because the team come first, you know. But I thought it was a bit disrespectful. I had 70 family there. I was right to start. You know, like the one last hurrah. I think every fighter thinks they got that one knockout blow, and I got used up a bit that night. So that was the end of my career.
What was the emotion like then after the game? Because you had the anger coming in and then the sentiment afterwards.
Yeah, no, I'd had enough. Like, to go there and play your last game and have, you know, like 70 of your family and friends there, and to go out and play and, you know, to watch the Cowboys win and to see the joy on, you know, my hometown and what it would have meant to North Queensland, I could sense that, even though I was really disappointed, but I was happy. I'd had enough. Like, I was at the end of it.
As you look back on the career now, some 20-odd years later, the legacy of Gorden Tallis, the legacy of the Raging Bull, how do you think you'll be remembered in the game of rugby league?
Just remembered, I think. I think people want to remember you the way they want to remember you, and to me, just be remembered.
It's a good way to finish. Gorden Tallis, thank you so much for joining us on League Legends.
Thanks, Jake.
This has been a Fox Sports production.